Ancient cities faced constant threats from contaminated water and stifling air. We are exploring how early urban designers engineered sanitation and climate control systems to overcome these dangers. By the end, you will understand forgotten principles that could make our modern cities healthier and more sustainable. How did Roman engineers build sewers that lasted for millennia? And what secret did Persian architects discover for natural air conditioning? These ancient solutions hold surprising relevance today. What do you believe is the most important lesson we have forgotten from these early urban pioneers? The story of urban design begins not with grand monuments, but with the humble necessity of a clean street. Deep in the Indus Valley, the city of Mohenjo-Daro presents a remarkable mystery. Built over 4,000 years ago, its streets were laid out in a precise grid, a pattern we often associate with modern city planning, but the true marvel lay beneath the surface. A network of covered drains, crafted from baked brick, channeled wastewater away from homes and public spaces. This was not a haphazard effort. It was a deliberate, city-wide system, demonstrating a profound understanding that community health depended on managing what others simply left in the open. These early planners were not just arranging buildings, they were consciously engineering an environment to resist decay and illness. They oriented their streets to capture breezes, creating a natural airflow that cooled the city and swept away stagnant air. This intricate dance between water management and air circulation reveals a foundational principle that the most successful cities are designed in harmony with the natural world, not in defiance of it. The silent, buried drains of Mohenjo-Daro whisper a question to our own sprawling metropolises. What core principles of health and harmony have we, in our age of advanced technology, accidentally left behind? The genius of Mohenjo-Daro's engineers lay in their deep observation of the land itself. They understood that water, essential for life, could also become its greatest threat if left uncontrolled. This led to a foundational principle of ancient urban design, the conscious harnessing of natural hydrology for waste removal. These early planners did not fight against the flow of water, they learned from it. By carefully studying the paths of seasonal rains and the natural slope of the terrain, they designed their entire drainage network to work in concert with gravity. Every channel and every pipe was laid with a precise, calculated grade, ensuring that wastewater from homes and public baths would flow steadily away from living spaces without ever needing a single mechanical pump. This was a system built on silent, constant motion. They even engineered a primitive form of water treatment. Before water was discharged, it would often pass through large, sunken basins. Here, the current would slow, allowing heavier solid matter to settle to the bottom. This simple yet effective step prevented blockages in the narrower drains and reduced the contamination of the surrounding environment. This principle of working with nature's own blueprint, of guiding water rather than forcing it, became a timeless lesson in urban resilience, one that would echo through the centuries in the ambitious projects of empires yet to come. This same principle of working with nature extended far beyond the ground, reaching up to shape the very air people breathed. Ancient planners understood that a city's health was dictated not just by clean water, but by the flow of the wind and the path of the sun. They practiced a form of strategic urban orientation, turning entire settlements into sophisticated climate control systems. Think of a Roman city, its main streets meticulously laid out not at random, but to align with the prevailing summer breezes. These long, straight avenues acted as wind tunnels, channeling cool air deep into the urban core, flushing out the stifling heat and the stagnant smells of crowded neighborhoods. But what happened when winter arrived? the very same planners had an answer. They oriented secondary streets and positioned larger buildings to act as windbreaks, shielding the city from harsh, cold gusts. This was a dynamic, two-season approach to comfort, all managed by the city's fundamental blueprint. Public squares and open spaces were not just social hubs, they were carefully placed ventilation lungs. By leaving these strategic gaps in the dense urban fabric, designers created pressure differentials that pulled fresh air through the city, a natural air exchange system operating silently and without cost. The sun was another tool meticulously harnessed. The orientation of buildings and the width of streets were calculated to maximize the low, warming sunlight in winter while providing deep, cooling shade during the intense summer heat. This is an early, brilliant form of passive climate design, where the need for artificial heating and cooling was dramatically reduced by the intelligent placement of the city itself. The comfort of the citizen was literally baked into the street grid, a testament to a forgotten wisdom that a city should be a shelter shaped by the sky. While the Romans mastered the flow of water above ground, their true ingenuity flowed just as powerfully beneath the city streets. Imagine the challenge of supplying a metropolis of over 1 million people with fresh water, all without a single electric pump. The Roman aqueduct system was the ultimate answer, a network of elevated channels that acted like artificial rivers, bending the landscape to their will. These were not just lines of stone arches marching across the countryside, they were precise instruments of hydraulic engineering. Their secret was an unerring reliance on gravity. Roman surveyors, using simple but brilliant tools, would map a gentle, continuous slope from a distant mountain spring all the way to the heart of the city. This gradient, often dropping only a few inches every 100 feet, was the silent engine that propelled millions of gallons of water day and night. The water did not race, it glided, maintaining a steady, reliable flow that required no external power. Before this water ever reached a public fountain, it underwent a form of purification. The aqueducts would often channel the flow into large, quiet pools called sedimentation tanks. Here, the current would slow to a crawl, allowing sand, silt, and other particles to gently sink to the bottom. This simple act of settling, of letting the water clean itself, was a crucial step in providing a safer supply for the urban population. The final distribution was a marvel of logistics. From massive holding reservoirs, a complex web of lead pipes carried water to public baths, ornate fountains, and even the homes of the wealthy. While we now understand the health risks associated with lead, Roman engineers did incorporate safety features, using thicker pipes and ensuring a constant flow to minimize the water's contact time with the metal. This was not merely a delivery system for drinking water. It was the lifeblood of urban sanitation, supplying the public latrines and the legendary Cloaca Maxima, the great sewer that flushed waste into the Tiber River. It was a tool for firefighting, with water readily available throughout the city, and it was a symbol of civic luxury, fueling the vast imperial baths that were central to Roman social life. This integrated approach, where one system served public health, safety, and culture simultaneously, set a standard that would inspire cities for 1,000 years. But what happened when this monumental system fell silent, and the clean, reliable flow of water ceased for the cities of Europe? The answer lies in a profound and difficult chapter of urban history, a time when the very principles of public health were nearly lost. This multifunctional wisdom extended into the very heart of ancient social life, transforming bustling public squares into sophisticated environmental engines. The Greek agora and the Roman forum were far more than markets or political centers. They were the breathing lungs of the city. planners deliberately placed these vast open plazas within the densest urban cores, creating crucial breaks in the unbroken lines of streets and buildings. This was a deliberate design strategy. When the prevailing winds swept across the city, these open spaces acted like valves, allowing fresh air to be drawn deep into the urban maze, flushing out the stale, overheated air that accumulated in cramped neighborhoods. They fought the heat island effect centuries before the term was ever coined, but the cooling did not stop with the breeze. These spaces were often anchored by magnificent public fountains. The sight and sound of flowing water was a symbol of civic prosperity, yet it served a brilliant dual purpose. As water splashed into basins and evaporated into the dry air, it actively cooled the immediate surroundings, creating pockets of refreshing microclimate where people could gather even on the hottest days. This was natural air conditioning powered by simple physics. Designers further enhanced this effect by integrating trees and gardens directly into the stone-paved plazas. The shade from a grove of trees provided immediate relief from the sun, while the leaves released moisture through transpiration, a process that further lowered the local air temperature. A Roman citizen seeking respite from the afternoon heat would find it not inside a building, but in the communal shade of the forum's gardens, cooled by both the whispering leaves and the nearby splash of a fountain. This was a holistic vision where every element served multiple masters. A single public space could be a political stage, a commercial hub, a social sanctuary, and a vital piece of climate infrastructure all at once. It represents a profound lesson in efficiency, where the needs of the community and the health of the environment were woven together into a single, elegant design. While Roman aqueducts marched proudly across the landscape, another civilization was solving the same problems from the opposite direction. Deep beneath the scorching deserts of ancient Persia, engineers carved out a hidden masterpiece, the Qanat system. This was not a structure of grand arches, but a secret, subterranean network designed to cheat the desert of its most precious resource. It began high in the mountains where snowmelt seeped into vast underground aquifers. Persian engineers located this water and, with astonishing precision, tunneled a gently sloping channel from the water source all the way to the thirsty plains below. The tunnel was dug with a slope just steep enough for gravity to pull the water along its entire journey, sometimes for dozens of miles without a single pump. But how did they build and maintain such a long, deep tunnel? The answer lies in the distinctive lines of vertical shafts that still mark the desert surface today. These were not wells but access and ventilation points dug at regular intervals. They allowed builders to remove excavated material and provided crucial airflow for the workers deep underground. This brilliant design meant the entire system remained accessible for cleaning and repair for generations. The primary benefit was survival. By keeping the water channel buried, the Qanat almost completely eliminated loss from evaporation under the relentless sun. It delivered a reliable, life-giving flow of water for drinking and irrigating fields, enabling cities to flourish in some of the world's most arid regions. Yet the genius of the Qanat did not stop at water delivery. The underground tunnels existed in a world of stable temperature, insulated from the extreme heat above. This coolness became a resource in itself. The water flowing through the Qanat was naturally chilled, and the tunnels themselves acted as cool air reservoirs. Persian architects then performed a final act of environmental magic. They built tall, chimney-like structures called wind towers atop homes and public buildings. These towers were designed with openings that captured the slightest breeze from high above the ground. The captured wind was then funneled down the tower and directed to flow across the surface of the Qanat water channel running below the building. The air was cooled by this contact and, now denser, would sink and flow into the living spaces. the warmer indoor air would rise and be drawn out through the tower, creating a continuous, passive cycle of refreshing, cooled air. This was a fully integrated system where a single underground channel provided both a secure water supply and natural air conditioning, a seamless harmony of necessity and comfort engineered from the very earth itself. The very stones of these ancient cities were chosen not just for their strength, but for their ability to breathe. This reveals a fourth foundational principle: the deliberate selection of materials to regulate temperature and maintain hygiene. In the heat of the day, thick walls of stone or mud brick acted like a thermal battery. They would slowly absorb the sun's intense energy, preventing it from penetrating into the living spaces. Then, as the cool night air descended, these same walls would gradually release their stored warmth, creating a remarkably stable indoor climate that needed no artificial heating or cooling. The building itself became a climate moderator, but the material choice went deeper, addressing the invisible threat of moisture and illness. Builders frequently used porous materials like terracotta. These bricks and tiles allowed the building to literally breathe, permitting trapped humid air to escape through microscopic pores in the clay. This passive ventilation drastically reduced the dampness that could lead to mold and respiratory troubles, a simple yet profound safeguard for public health. The same careful logic governed sanitation. For the channels that carried away waste, engineers selected the exact opposite type of material. They used non-porous, heavily fired clay or smooth stone. These slick, impermeable surfaces prevented liquid waste from being absorbed into the walls, which would have created persistent foul odors and breeding grounds for pests. Instead, the waste was swiftly carried away, and the smooth walls could be easily scoured and cleaned, maintaining a far more hygienic environment. Some cultures even developed advanced plasters, mixing local minerals or plant extracts into their wall coatings. Modern analysis suggests some of these mixtures possessed antimicrobial properties, actively inhibiting the growth of harmful organisms on the interior surfaces of homes and public buildings. This was a form of preventative medicine built directly into the walls. Every choice from the quarry to the kiln was a response to the local environment. It was a deep collaboration with the available resources, a dialogue between human need and the inherent properties of earth, stone, and clay. The city was not merely built from its surroundings, it was designed to work in concert with them, creating a healthier habitat through intelligent, thoughtful selection. Yet the fall of Rome did not erase the fundamental need for urban sanitation. In the winding, crowded streets of a medieval European town, the challenge of waste management took on a different, more localized character. Far from being a period of uniform squalor, these communities developed a patchwork of practical, if imperfect, solutions born from sheer necessity. Town councils enacted strict ordinances, requiring every homeowner to keep the gutters and drainage channels in front of their property clear of refuse. A failure to do so could result in a fine, a direct form of civic regulation that placed the burden of public cleanliness on individual responsibility. This was not a city-wide sewer network, but a decentralized system of micromanagement that fought back against the ever-present threat of clogged streets and contaminated runoff. For the more challenging problem of human waste, some larger cities engineered underground cesspits. These were carefully lined with stone to prevent seepage into the ground, and they were designed to be periodically emptied by a designated, if undesirable, class of waste collectors. It was a rudimentary but functional approach to containment and removal. Perhaps the most advanced systems of the era were hidden within monastery walls. Here, in communities dedicated to order and self-sufficiency, monks sometimes constructed sophisticated water filtration devices. They would channel spring water through sequential layers of clean sand and crushed charcoal, a natural process that trapped sediment and impurities, providing a remarkably pure supply for drinking and medicinal herb gardens. There was also a growing, if intuitive, understanding of industrial zoning. Town planners made a conscious effort to cite foul-smelling and polluting trades like tanneries and butcheries on the downstream outskirts of the settlement. This deliberate placement ensured that the waste from these essential industries would flow away from the main residential water sources, a clear acknowledgement of the link between water quality and public health. These were not monumental engineering feats like the Roman aqueduct, but they were vital, incremental steps. They represent a society grappling with the complexities of urban living, slowly rebuilding the knowledge of how a community can actively manage its own environment for the collective good. The layout of an ancient city was a deliberate defense against invisible threats. Long before the term zoning was ever coined, early planners were masters of strategic separation, intuitively creating urban landscapes that minimized disease and discomfort. They recognized that certain essential activities like tanning leather or butchering animals produced waste and odors that posed a risk to the community's well-being. The solution was remarkably consistent across cultures: place these industries deliberately downstream and downwind. A tannery, with its vats of chemical solutions and animal hides, would be situated on the outskirts of town, its runoff channeled away from the rivers that supplied drinking water. A slaughterhouse would be positioned so that the prevailing winds carried its smells away from the densely packed residential quarters, not into them. This was not a random arrangement of buildings, it was a conscious, calculated system of urban triage. The goal was to create a buffer between the messy necessities of survival and the spaces where people lived, worked, and raised their families. These separations were often reinforced by the landscape itself. A grove of trees, a man-made canal, or even a simple open field could act as a green barrier, a natural no-man's land that provided both physical and psychological distance from the noise and fumes of industry. In some cultures, these divisions were further codified by religious or cultural beliefs. Sacred spaces, like temples or communal shrines, were often located far from areas associated with impurity, protecting their ceremonial significance from the daily grime of industrial life. This early form of land use planning was a profound acknowledgement that a city's health depended on more than just clean water or fresh air. It required a thoughtful geography that assigned every activity its proper place. Can you envision the careful logic behind these ancient street maps, where the location of a workshop was a matter of public health? This foundational principle, born from simple observation and necessity, would one day become a cornerstone of modern urban design, a quiet testament to the enduring power of keeping things in their right place. Yet even these carefully zoned cities on land could not match the sheer audacity of an empire that built its capital upon the water. The Aztec city of Tenochtitlan was an urban marvel, a sprawling metropolis of canals and gleaming temples that seemed to float on the surface of Lake Texcoco. Its very existence defied the constraints of its environment, a testament to engineering so advanced it turned a marshy lake into the heart of a civilization. The foundation of this achievement was the Chinampa, often called a floating garden, though it was far more than that. These were not rafts but carefully constructed artificial islands. Builders would stake out rectangular plots in the shallow lake bed, then weave enormous fences from reeds and willow trees. They filled these enclosures with layers of rich mud from the lake bottom, alternating with decaying vegetation. The result was a new, fertile land that rested just above the waterline. But the true genius of the Chinampa was its multi-layered purpose. These islands produced immense quantities of food, supporting a population that might have reached 200,000 people. Simultaneously, the dense, matted root systems of the crops grown on them acted as a massive, living filtration system. As water slowly percolated through the network of roots, sediments and impurities were trapped, naturally cleansing the lake water that flowed through the city's countless canals. The canals themselves were the city's lifeblood, serving as bustling aquatic highways for canoes carrying goods and people. Yet they were also an integral part of the sanitation system. The constant, gentle movement of boat traffic helped to keep the water from becoming stagnant, while also facilitating the transport of waste away from residential areas to be used as fertilizer in the Chinampas. This created a beautiful, closed-loop system where nothing was truly wasted. Aztec engineers faced a constant hydrological challenge, the threat of both flooding and saltwater intrusion from the brackish parts of the lake. Their solution was a monumental dike stretching for miles across the lake. This stone and earth barrier was a masterpiece of environmental control. During the rainy season, it held back storm surges, protecting the city's low-lying districts. Perhaps even more cleverly, it helped maintain a higher, fresher water level on the city side, pushing the saltier water back and ensuring a supply of usable water for both the Chinampas and the citizens. To bring fresh spring water from the mainland, they constructed a dual-channeled aqueduct made of terracotta. This design allowed one channel to be cleaned and maintained while the other remained in operation, ensuring an uninterrupted flow of clean water. The great causeways that connected the island city to the shore were another stroke of engineering foresight. They were not solid barriers but pierced with removable bridges. These openings allowed the natural flow of water and canoe traffic to continue unimpeded, preventing the lake from being choked into separate, stagnant pools. Tenochtitlan was not a city that simply existed in its environment. It was a city that was intelligently, deliberately woven into it. Every element, from the smallest garden to the largest dike, worked in harmony, creating a stunningly sustainable urban ecosystem that challenges our modern notions of what a city can be. The sixth principle transforms a city from a collection of stones into a living, breathing ecosystem. Ancient designers understood that true urban health required more than channels for water and air. It demanded the very presence of life itself. They wove nature directly into the urban fabric, using greenery as a sophisticated tool for purification and comfort. While the Hanging Gardens of Babylon stand as a legendary example, a vision of terraced trees and vibrant flowers rising into the sky, the everyday reality was just as profound. In Rome, the wealthy class built their villas around central courtyards, open to the sky and filled with lush gardens. This was not merely for beauty. These enclosed green spaces acted as the lungs of the home. The plants absorbed dust and impurities from the air, while the process of evapotranspiration, where leaves release water vapor, actively cooled the surrounding atmosphere, creating a natural refuge from the city's heat. This was a personal, miniature climate system operating within the walls of a single residence. On a much broader scale, the planners of ancient Chinese cities made urban forestry an official policy. They would issue decrees to protect ancient trees from being cut down for construction, recognizing their irreplaceable value. New trees were systematically planted along major avenues and within public squares. The purpose was brilliantly multi-layered. The canopy of leaves cast a blanket of shade over streets and buildings, dramatically reducing the temperature at ground level. Simultaneously, these living corridors disrupted and guided the wind, improving air circulation throughout the entire urban area. Every leaf acted as a tiny filter, trapping dust and airborne particles, cleansing the air with every gentle breeze. This collective effect combated what we now call the urban heat island, where dense concentrations of stone and pavement absorb and radiate intense heat. The ancient solution was to weave a green net over the city, a living infrastructure that moderated temperature, purified the air, and restored a sense of natural balance to the human habitat. This was not a decorative afterthought, it was a core tenet of intelligent design, demonstrating that the most resilient cities are those that do not merely occupy land, but that cultivate it. Even as the Western Roman Empire faded, its engineering wisdom was preserved and refined in the East. The Byzantine Empire transformed the monumental legacy of Roman aqueducts into a more resilient and self-contained system, mastering the art of capturing and storing the sky itself. At the heart of their capital, Constantinople, lay a hidden world of water, a silent, subterranean ocean held in check by stone. The Basilica Cistern was its crowning achievement, an underground palace built not for people, but for the lifeblood of the city. Stepping inside was to enter an impossible forest, where 336 marble columns rose from dark, still waters to support a cavernous brick ceiling. This was not merely a tank, it was a climate-controlled reservoir, its constant cool temperature and darkness preventing the algae growth that would spoil the supply. It could hold millions upon millions of gallons, a strategic reserve that could sustain the dense urban population through long sieges or seasonal droughts. But collecting such a vast quantity was only the first challenge. The true test was keeping it pure. Byzantine engineers designed the cistern with a brilliant multi-stage conscience. Before water ever entered the main chamber, it was often channeled through a series of smaller preceding basins. These acted as silent guardians. The first basin would allow the heaviest sediment to settle out. The water would then flow into a second chamber, this one filled with layers of carefully graded sand and gravel. As it percolated through this natural filter, finer impurities were trapped, resulting in water that was remarkably clear and safe by ancient standards. This was a system that thought ahead, that understood cleanliness was a process, not a single event. Distribution was the final masterpiece. How do you lift water to the hills and palaces of a great city without pumps? The answer lay in a simple principle of physics, that of communicating vessels. The Byzantines constructed a network of sealed terracotta or lead pipes that connected the cisterns to distribution towers across the city. Because the cistern itself was built at a high elevation, the water within it was under natural pressure. This pressure pushed the water through the pipes, allowing it to climb to the level of the reservoir's surface anywhere in the system. It was a closed, pressurized network that could deliver water to elevated neighborhoods and even to the upper floors of imperial buildings, a luxury of hydraulic engineering that would not be common again for centuries. The entire system was designed for permanence and ease of care. Elaborate overflow channels ensured that during exceptionally heavy rains, the cistern would not be damaged, safely diverting excess water. Strategically placed access shafts allowed maintenance crews to enter and clean the sedimentation basins without ever needing to drain the primary reservoir, ensuring a continuous, uninterrupted supply for the city's fountains, baths, and homes. This was a holistic, deeply intelligent approach to urban survival. It was a water system that anticipated disruption, prioritized purity, and leveraged the landscape itself to create a resilient heartbeat for one of history's greatest cities. What does this hidden, liquid architecture tell us about the priorities of a civilization determined to endure? The silent, cool air of a Byzantine cistern reveals a civilization's mastery over water, but another invisible element demanded equal ingenuity, the very air people breathed inside their homes and workplaces. Early builders developed a remarkable vocabulary of architectural features dedicated solely to the art of natural ventilation. In the hot, arid regions of the Middle East, architects designed wind catchers, tall, tower-like structures that rose above the roof lines. These were not mere decorations, they were precision instruments. Their vertical shafts were carefully oriented to capture the slightest prevailing breeze from high above the ground, where the air was often cleaner and cooler. This captured wind was then funneled downward, directly into the heart of the living space below. But the innovation did not stop there. Often, this incoming air would be directed to flow across the surface of a small indoor pool or a channel of Qanat water. The contact instantly cooled the air through evaporation, transforming a simple breeze into a refreshing current of natural air conditioning before it ever reached the occupants. This was a seamless marriage of two ancient technologies, creating comfort from the union of wind and water. Half a world away, Japanese builders approached the same challenge of air and climate with a different, equally elegant philosophy. Traditional homes were designed not as sealed boxes, but as permeable structures that breathed with the seasons. The Ingawa, a delicate wooden veranda that wrapped around the building, served as a transitional zone between the inner rooms and the outer garden. Its sliding shoji screens made of translucent paper over a wooden frame were the key to adjustable ventilation. On a stifling summer day, these screens could be slid completely open, turning an entire wall of the house into one vast window. This allowed cool cross breezes to flow freely throughout the interior, carrying away stagnant air and humidity. When the weather turned cold or wet, the screens could be closed, still allowing soft, diffused light to enter while providing protection from the elements. This system gave inhabitants direct, intuitive control over their immediate environment, a testament to a design philosophy that sought harmony with nature rather than domination over it. Even in the dense urban fabric of ancient Rome, where multi-story apartment buildings called insulae packed citizens together, designers found a way to make the air move. These structures often featured a central, open light well at their core. This was far more than a source of illumination. It was a powerful ventilation engine. As the sun warmed the air inside this central shaft, the heated air would become less dense and begin to rise swiftly upward. This created a stack effect, a powerful suction that actively drew stale, warm air out of the surrounding rooms and upward through the open roof. To replace this expelled air, fresh, cooler air was pulled in through lower-level openings, windows, and doorways. This continuous, passive cycle ensured a constant exchange of air, fighting the buildup of indoor pollutants, cooking smoke, and excessive moisture that could lead to illness and discomfort in such crowded living conditions. The beautiful diversity of these adaptations, from the targeted capture of Persian wind catchers to the flexible openness of Japanese screens and the convective draw of Roman light wells, demonstrates a universal truth. Early designers were brilliant observers of their local climates. They did not possess advanced mechanical systems, so they turned to architecture itself as the primary tool for environmental control. They shaped stone, wood, and clay into forms that invited the wind inside, that harnessed the sun's power to move air, and that gave people the power to fine-tune their own comfort. These passive strategies required no fossil fuels, only a deep understanding of physics and a respectful collaboration with the natural world. In an age where we seal our buildings shut and rely entirely on machinery for fresh air, these silent, architectural lungs whisper a question about the wisdom of designing buildings that can actually breathe. Beneath the grandeur of Rome's marble monuments lay a parallel city of stone, a hidden network that carried away the waste of 1 million people. The Cloaca Maxima began its life not as a sewer, but as a bold act of land reclamation. Around 600 BCE, Roman engineers carved an open channel through the marshy ground between the city's hills, draining the stagnant water that bred illness and creating stable land for building. This single, functional ditch was the humble seed from which an engineering marvel would grow. As Rome expanded, so did the system. Over centuries, that open channel was gradually covered over with massive stone slabs, transforming it from a simple drain into the main artery of an extensive underground network. This was not a static creation, but a living system that evolved alongside the city it served, demonstrating a profound commitment to progressive urban improvement. The genius of its design lay in a principle we have seen before: the silent, relentless pull of gravity. Engineers meticulously calculated the slope of every tunnel, ensuring a continuous, self-cleaning flow that swept waste from the city's public latrines, bathhouses, and streets directly toward the Tiber River. To maintain this vital flow, they incorporated regular access shafts, allowing crews to descend and clear any blockages, a testament to the foresight that valued long-term function over short-term convenience. The very materials used in its construction were a stroke of engineering brilliance. Roman builders mixed a special volcanic ash with lime to create a cement that could actually harden underwater. This produced incredibly durable, watertight channels that locked waste inside the tunnel, preventing it from seeping out and contaminating the groundwater that fed the city's wells. This crucial separation between clean water and waste was a foundational leap in public health. The Cloaca Maxima stands as one of history's first large-scale attempts to systematically manage the byproducts of urban life. Its principles of gravity-fed flow, durable construction, and planned maintenance became a quiet legacy, influencing sanitation practices across Europe for centuries and establishing the basic blueprint that would eventually inform the modern sewer systems we rely on today. This monumental work challenges our perception of Roman achievement, reminding us that the true measure of a civilization's greatness might be found not in its temples, but in the silent, flowing architecture beneath its streets. The silent, flowing architecture of the Cloaca Maxima required more than just engineering genius to function. It demanded the active care of the community it served. This reveals an eighth crucial principle: that the most enduring urban systems blend physical infrastructure with a powerful sense of shared responsibility. Ancient societies understood that a city's health was not just a matter of stone and pipe, but of social organization and collective habit. In the meticulously planned streets of ancient Rome, for instance, the role of the aedile was born. These were public officials whose duties included inspecting the city's streets, markets, and public baths for cleanliness. They had the authority to enforce regulations and levy fines on property owners who failed to maintain the drains or sidewalks in front of their homes. This was not merely bureaucratic oversight. It was a formal recognition that individual negligence could threaten the well-being of the entire urban body. The system created a chain of accountability, ensuring that the grand vision of the central planners was upheld through countless small, daily actions by the citizens themselves. Beyond official enforcement, many cultures established regular community cleaning days. Before major festivals or at the change of seasons, the entire population of a neighborhood might come together to clear debris from the streets, scrub public fountains, and ensure the drainage channels were flowing freely. This collective labor transformed maintenance from a chore into a civic ritual, strengthening social bonds, while simultaneously preserving the functionality of the urban environment. It was a practical solution that also nurtured a profound sense of shared ownership over the city's health. Cultural and religious practices provided another powerful layer of support for public hygiene. In numerous ancient societies, ceremonial bathing was not just a spiritual act of purification, it was a physical one that supported community health. The design of elaborate public bathhouses, from the Roman thermae to the Japanese sento, institutionalized regular washing, reducing the spread of illness. Similarly, restrictions on waste disposal near sacred rivers or temples, while rooted in spiritual reverence, had the direct effect of protecting vital water sources from contamination. These behavioral norms, whether enforced by law or ingrained by tradition, created a cultural software that ran seamlessly on the hardware of aqueducts and sewers. This integration of social organization with technical solutions represents an early, brilliant form of holistic urban management. It acknowledged that a city is a living organism, and its vitality depends as much on the habits of its people as on the strength of its walls. Can the invisible architecture of shared responsibility be the most vital system a city ever builds? While Roman sewers channeled water away, the architects of ancient India designed structures that drew communities toward it. Carved deep into the earth, the traditional stepwells of the subcontinent are breathtaking monuments to water's central role in civilization. These were not mere wells, but inverted palaces, where elaborate staircases descended in stunning symmetrical patterns, following the receding water level down through the driest seasons. This architectural marvel was a direct response to a harsh climate. By building down into the ground, engineers created a naturally cool, humid sanctuary, a refuge from the blistering heat above. The stone walls, shielded from the sun, remained cool to the touch, and the air at the bottom of the well was often 10 or 15 degrees cooler than the surface, a natural air conditioning system powered by the earth itself. But the genius of the stepwell extended far beyond simple storage. The entire structure was a sophisticated rainwater harvesting engine. Expansive courtyards and intricately carved channels were designed to capture every possible drop of monsoon rain, funneling torrential downpours from vast catchment areas directly into the central reservoir. This maximized the recharge of the groundwater table, ensuring the well would not run dry during the long, rainless months. Yet perhaps the most profound innovation was social. These were not lonely, utilitarian pits, they were vibrant community hubs. The stepped landings provided ample space for villagers to gather, socialize, and rest in the cool shade. Women collecting water could meet and talk, transforming a daily chore into a social ritual. Travelers found respite from their journeys, and local festivals were often held within the stepwell's ornate galleries. This seamless integration transformed a piece of vital infrastructure into the beating heart of a community, where the practical needs for water and cool air were woven together with the human need for connection and culture. In a single, elegant structure, these ancient engineers solved the problems of water security, climate control, and social cohesion, creating a model of multifunctional design that challenges our modern, segregated approach to urban services. The enduring strength of ancient infrastructure lies not just in its initial construction, but in its capacity for transformation. Early urban designers were masters of adaptation, viewing their cities not as finished works, but as living entities that required continuous, intelligent evolution. They understood that a city's survival depended on its ability to improve upon the past without discarding it entirely. This philosophy of incremental enhancement and adaptive reuse became a ninth, vital principle of resilient urban design. Roman engineers frequently encountered the earlier drainage works of the Etruscan civilization. Instead of demolishing these existing channels, they saw them as a foundation. They would carefully survey the old system, then expand its capacity by widening tunnels, reinforcing walls with their superior hydraulic concrete, and extending the network into new city districts. This was not a rejection of the old, but a respectful and practical evolution, building directly upon the ingenuity of those who came before. The pattern repeated centuries later across medieval Europe. As towns grew atop ancient Roman ruins, new builders did not ignore the monumental stone aqueducts and sewers. They recognized the enduring value in those structures. It was common to see a new castle or a town wall constructed with stones repurposed from a collapsed Roman bridge, or a medieval water channel carefully tied into the mouth of an ancient, still functioning sewer outlet. This preserved the functional core of the original infrastructure while layering on new components that met the needs of a changed society. This approach minimized the tremendous waste of materials and energy that would have been required for total reconstruction. The process was often a gradual, almost organic one. A natural stream flowing through a settlement might begin its life as an open watercourse. As the community grew, the first improvement might be to line its banks with timber to prevent erosion. A generation later, stone might replace the wood for greater durability. Finally, a century on, the entire stream might be covered over with stone slabs to create a proper covered drain, transforming a natural feature into a controlled piece of civic engineering through a series of deliberate, manageable steps. This incremental method ensured the city's sanitation and water management never had to shut down for a massive, disruptive overhaul. Life and commerce could continue uninterrupted while the city slowly, steadily upgraded itself. This sustainable philosophy respected the immense labor and resources already invested in the urban fabric, the embodied energy held within those existing stones and channels. It represents a profound lesson in stewardship, where the goal was not to constantly erase and rebuild, but to carefully modify, repair, and enhance. How different might our modern cities look if we viewed our own aging infrastructure not as a problem to be replaced, but as a foundation to be intelligently adapted for the future? Centuries before Rome's Cloaca Maxima, the Minoan palace of Knossos hummed with the sound of running water. On the island of Crete, around 2,000 years before the Common Era, engineers were designing sanitation solutions of breathtaking sophistication. Within the sprawling, multi-story palace complex, they installed a network of terracotta pipes, each section carefully tapered to create a tight, pressure-sealing fit. This was not a single-purpose line. The Minoans engineered a dual system with one set of pipes dedicated to bringing in fresh, clean water from mountain springs miles away, and a completely separate network to carry wastewater out. This fundamental separation of clean and dirty water was a revolutionary public health concept, a deliberate design to prevent cross-contamination and protect the community from waterborne illness. The principle of gravity was their silent, tireless worker. By channeling water from elevated sources, they created a constant, reliable flow that required no mechanical pumps, bringing the luxury of running water directly into the palace walls. Perhaps the most striking feature was the flush toilet. Found in quarters believed to belong to the queen, a wooden seat was positioned over a terracotta drain. A servant would pour water from a jug to flush waste down through a closed, stone sewer line that ran deep within the palace walls. This was not a crude pit, but a dedicated, engineered conduit for sewage. To manage the byproducts of this system, the Minoans displayed further genius. They incorporated vertical shafts that ran alongside the drainage channels. These were not for access but for ventilation. By allowing air to circulate within the sewer pipes, they prevented the dangerous buildup of foul gases, ensuring these odors were safely vented above the living quarters rather than seeping back into the palace rooms. Even the very floors were part of the design. Minoan builders carefully graded the stone pavements with a slight, almost imperceptible slope. This guiding incline, combined with strategically placed drainage channels carved directly into the stone, ensured that any rainwater or accidental spills were swiftly channeled away, keeping the vast complex dry and hygienic. The entire palace was, in effect, a single, integrated machine for health and comfort. This Bronze Age achievement forces us to reconsider the entire timeline of urban progress. It reveals that the drive to create a clean, controlled living environment is not a modern invention, but a very ancient and profound human aspiration. The health of a city was often written not just in its laws, but in its prayers. A 10th principle of ancient urban wisdom reveals how societies masterfully wove the threads of environmental management into the very fabric of their cultural and religious lives. This integration transformed practical necessities into sacred duties, ensuring compliance through deep-seated social norms that often proved more powerful than any official edict. In ancient Egypt, the concept of ritual purity was a profound force in daily life. It was not merely a spiritual idea, it had direct physical consequences for the city's well-being. Laws and customs dictated meticulous personal hygiene, including regular washing and specific protocols for waste disposal. These practices, reinforced by spiritual belief, created a culture where cleanliness was a virtue that supported public health, preventing contamination and the spread of illness in dense settlements along the Nile. The river itself was seen as a divine gift, and this reverence shaped how communities interacted with it. While the Nile was central to life, there was a conscious effort to manage human activity along its banks, blending practical need with spiritual respect to protect this vital waterway. Far to the east, Hindu traditions have long honored rivers as sacred manifestations of the divine. This spiritual view of rivers like the Ganges directly influenced settlement planning and waste management for millennia. The belief in the purifying power of these waters was coupled with cultural norms that discouraged the most harmful forms of pollution near certain stretches, especially those used for ceremonial purposes. This created a form of natural zoning, where the location of activities was guided by a combination of practical necessity and deep-seated reverence, preserving water quality in key areas through cultural consensus rather than coercion. This philosophy extended into architecture under Islamic principles, where design was often a spiritual act. Building codes derived from tradition frequently mandated features that served both environmental and human comfort. Courtyards were positioned to capture cooling breezes. Intricate lattice screens provided shade while allowing light and air to filter in, and the provision of fresh water through fountains or cisterns was considered a charitable duty. These were not arbitrary aesthetic choices. They were requirements that seamlessly blended the pursuit of spiritual well-being with the creation of a healthy, comfortable living environment. The brilliance of this approach lies in its endurance. When a sustainable practice is embedded within a cultural ritual or a spiritual tenet, it ceases to be an external rule and becomes a part of shared identity. It is passed down through generations not as a building code, but as a way of life. The fusion of practical necessity with heartfelt belief created the most resilient motivation of all, a collective desire to maintain harmony with the world, ensuring that the health of the city and the spirit of its people were nurtured as one. This deep integration of environment and culture found one of its most systematic expressions in the ancient principles of Feng Shui. Far more than an art of interior decoration, Feng Shui was a comprehensive science of place, a method for aligning entire human settlements with the invisible currents of the natural world. Its goal was to cultivate what practitioners called Sheng Kai, or vital life force energy, by creating a perfect balance between the built environment and the surrounding landscape. The selection of a city's location was a matter of profound importance, guided by a precise formula for harmony. The ideal site was protected by embracing mountains to the north, which served as a formidable windbreak against the harsh, cold Siberian winds of winter. To the south, a gentle, meandering river or stream was essential, ensuring a reliable water source while its winding path was believed to help the vital energy gather and accumulate rather than rush away. This classic configuration, known as the armchair formation, was not merely symbolic. It provided tangible, practical benefits, creating a sheltered microclimate that was naturally defended from climatic extremes. The orientation of streets and buildings was a careful calculation of sun and wind. Main thoroughfares were often aligned to capture the gentle, cooling southern breezes in the summer, while the positioning of individual structures was determined by the sun's path. A building's front would face south to soak up the low, warming winter sunlight, while its deep, overhanging eaves provided ample shade during the intense summer heat, a passive solar design perfected centuries ago. This thoughtful placement minimized the need for artificial heating and cooling, making daily life more comfortable and sustainable. Water management in Feng Shui was a sacred responsibility. The practice emphasized working with the land's natural drainage patterns, never against them. Canals and ponds were incorporated into urban plans not just for transportation or irrigation, but as vital elements for regulating the flow of energy. Stagnant water was carefully avoided, as it was thought to breed negative influences, while gently flowing water was encouraged to maintain freshness and vitality. This philosophy ensured that a city's hydrological system supported both its physical health and its spiritual well-being, viewing clean, moving water as the lifeblood of the community. This holistic system fused the metaphysical with the measurable, the concepts of yin and yang, the balancing of complementary forces, and the 5 elemental phases were used to diagnose and correct environmental imbalances. A planner might introduce a pond or a specific type of tree not just for its beauty, but to correct an energetic deficiency in the landscape, fostering a greater sense of harmony and prosperity for the inhabitants. Feng Shui represents a pinnacle of ancient wisdom, demonstrating that the most successful cities are those conceived not as separate from nature, but as a conscious, respectful, and integrated extension of it. The silent wisdom of Feng Shui reveals a deeper truth, that ancient cities were designed not just for comfort, but for survival in the face of nature's immense power. An 11th principle guided their hands, the conscious engineering of disaster resilience directly into the urban fabric. These early designers understood that a city's true test came not during times of peace, but during moments of environmental crisis, and they prepared by creating systems that served multiple protective roles. The rock-carved city of Petra stands as a monumental example. Its architects did not simply build within the sandstone cliffs, they learned from them. The massive rock faces provided natural insulation, shielding the interior spaces from the desert's scorching days and retaining warmth during the cold nights, a passive form of climate control carved from the earth itself. Yet the greater threat was water. In a landscape prone to sudden, violent flash floods, the Nabateans engineered a masterpiece of hydrological control. They carved intricate networks of channels and dams that captured the destructive torrents, taming the floodwaters and diverting them into a series of massive cisterns. This brilliant system transformed a lethal threat into a life-sustaining resource, ensuring a reliable water supply for drinking, sanitation, and agriculture, all while keeping the city's heart safe from inundation. This was risk management woven directly into the city's water infrastructure. In regions shaken by earthquakes, builders developed techniques that allowed their structures to dance with the earth rather than resist it. They used flexible timber frames that could sway and absorb the energy of a tremor. They set stones with interlocking shapes that would shift and settle without collapsing. The goal was to create buildings and the vital water channels within them that could endure a shock without fracturing, maintaining the crucial separation between clean water and waste even when the ground itself was unstable. This preserved the city's sanitation backbone precisely when it was needed most, in the chaotic aftermath of a disaster. Along vulnerable coastlines, settlements did not merely build walls against the sea, they cultivated living barriers. Communities planted and preserved vast mangrove forests. These dense, tangled root systems acted as a natural shock absorber, dissipating the destructive energy of storm surges before they could reach inhabited areas. But this was not a single-purpose defense. The mangroves also served as rich nurseries for fish, supporting local food supplies, while their complex root structures filtered runoff from the land, improving water quality and protecting near-shore waters from contamination. These were multi-purpose shields, providing disaster resilience, economic sustenance, and environmental purification in one integrated design. This forward-thinking approach demonstrates a profound lesson for our own era. It shows that the most enduring urban environments are those where daily functionality and emergency preparedness are not separate goals, but two sides of the same coin, designed together from the very beginning. The dry plains of medieval Spain blossomed into lush gardens under the careful guidance of Islamic engineers. Their solution was the acequia, a network of gravity-fed canals that performed a kind of hydrological alchemy, turning scarce mountain water into the lifeblood of entire regions. This was not a single channel, but a branching, tree-like system, where each smaller canal carried water further into the fields and towns. The entire design was a masterpiece of silent motion, relying on a gradient so precise that water would glide for miles without any mechanical aid. Its primary purpose was to feed vast agricultural areas, creating the famous huertas that turned arid landscapes into thriving centers of citrus, olive, and vegetable production. Yet the genius of the acequia was its multi-layered function, serving the needs of the farm, the city, and the home with a single, flowing resource. Before this precious water ever reached a populated area, it was often made cleaner. Engineers designed settling basins along the route, quiet pools where the current slowed, allowing silt and sediment to drift to the bottom. At key points, water would be directed through channels filled with sand and gravel, a natural filtration process that strained out impurities. This attention to quality meant the water arriving in a city was not just for irrigation, it was clean enough to drink. The canals flowed directly through urban centers, channeled into public fountains whose soothing sounds and evaporating mist cooled the surrounding plazas. They supplied the water for the essential public bathhouses, institutions central to both community life and personal hygiene. This integration created a comfortable, healthy urban environment where the same water that nourished a distant farm also cooled a town square and cleansed its people. The entire system was governed by a remarkable social invention, the Community Water Association. Composed of local farmers and citizens, this body managed the delicate and vital task of water distribution according to a strict, timed schedule. They also organized the regular communal cleaning of the canals, ensuring that the channels remained clear and the water pure. This blend of precise engineering with deeply embedded social cooperation created a resilient model that sustained communities for centuries. The acequia stands as a powerful example of a holistic system where technology, ecology, and human society were woven together into a single, sustainable whole. A city that cannot grow is a city destined to fail, and ancient planners understood this better than anyone. They engineered their environmental systems not as finished, rigid creations, but as living networks designed to expand alongside the community they served. This 12th principle of scalable infrastructure was their masterstroke against the chaos of rapid urbanization. They built frameworks that could grow organically, preventing the environmental collapse that so often plagues modern cities bursting at their seams. The modular design of ancient sewer systems is a perfect example. A main stone-lined channel, the great trunk of the system, would be laid down with deliberate foresight. Its builders knew that future neighborhoods would arise, and so they left connection points, carefully sealed stone openings, at strategic intervals along its length. When a new district was constructed, engineers simply had to tunnel a smaller branch line from the local drainage network and connect it to this waiting port on the main trunk. This was not a disruptive, city-wide project, but a localized, manageable extension that seamlessly integrated the new area into the existing sanitation web. The entire network could thus expand in a logical, branching pattern, much like a tree adding new limbs without ever requiring the costly and dangerous replacement of its core structure. This same hierarchical logic governed the flow of clean water. A massive aqueduct would deliver its precious cargo to a central castellum or distribution tank. From this primary hub, a network of smaller secondary channels, often made of terracotta or lead, would carry water to various city quarters. As urban growth pushed the boundaries outward, planners would simply extend these secondary lines or even add new, smaller distribution tanks to serve the emerging suburbs. The system was designed from the start with this branching potential in mind, ensuring that a reliable water supply, the very foundation of public health, could keep pace with a booming population. The physical layout of the city itself was the final piece of this scalable puzzle. The rigid grid patterns favored by civilizations from the Indus Valley to the Romans were not just about orderly streets, they were a blueprint for infinite, logical expansion. When a city laid out on a perfect grid needed to grow, planners could simply extend the existing street lines. This automatically created new city blocks and, most importantly, preserved the crucial corridors for drainage and ventilation. The straight, wide avenues that channeled cooling breezes and the carefully sloped gutters that carried away rainwater could be replicated endlessly, ensuring that the environmental benefits of the original design were not lost as the city sprawled. This foresight represents a profound form of long-term thinking. These early urban managers were not just solving the problems of the present, they were planting the seeds for a healthy urban future, creating a resilient framework that could accommodate generations of growth without sacrificing the fundamental principles of sanitation and climate control that made city life possible. The most sustainable climate control systems were not engineered in a distant capital, but quietly perfected in the local village. These vernacular traditions, born from generations of trial and error, demonstrate a universal human genius for shaping shelter from the immediate environment. In the cold winters of Korea, the Hanok House presented a masterclass in seasonal adaptation. Its most celebrated feature was the ondol floor, a system of stone channels that conducted warm air and smoke from the kitchen fireplace beneath the living space. This radiant heat created a warm, comfortable surface for sitting and sleeping during the harsh cold. But when summer's humidity arrived, the house transformed. The family would move their daily life to the Dichung Maru, a central wooden floor raised slightly above the ground. This clever elevation allowed cooling air to circulate freely on all sides, pulling heat away from the inhabitants and creating a naturally ventilated refuge. The house itself breathed with the seasons, requiring no artificial power, only a deep understanding of thermodynamics and local materials. This same principle of creating microclimates through form appears in the compound houses found across many regions of Africa. These structures were often arranged as a collection of individual rooms surrounding a central, open courtyard. This was far more than an empty space. It was the heart of the home's environmental system. During the heat of the day, the sun would warm the air within the courtyard, causing it to rise. This rising air would then draw in cooler, fresher air from the surrounding rooms and from outside the compound walls, creating a continuous, gentle breeze through every living space. This convective airflow was a passive, silent fan, constantly renewing the air and providing relief from the stifling heat. The courtyard also served a vital role in sanitation, often containing a private washing area strategically placed for drainage and privacy, integrating the management of water and waste directly into the family's daily rhythm. Half a world away, the Pueblo structures of the American Southwest achieved a similar harmony through mass and material. Built from thick blocks of adobe, a mixture of earth, water, and straw, these buildings possessed immense thermal mass. The sun's intense daytime heat would be slowly absorbed by the thick walls, preventing the interior from becoming an oven. Then, as the desert night grew cold, the stored warmth within the walls would gradually radiate back into the living spaces, stabilizing the indoor temperature through a 24-hour cycle. Furthermore, the adobe itself was a breathable material. Its porous nature allowed moisture from the air and from daily activities to pass through the walls where it would evaporate outside. This natural process prevented the damp, stagnant conditions that could lead to mold and respiratory issues, maintaining a dry and healthy interior environment using nothing more than the inherent properties of sun-dried earth. Each of these diverse architectural languages, from the Korean Hanok to the African compound and the Native American Pueblo, tells the same profound story. They emerged not from a central authority, but from countless anonymous builders observing the subtle cues of their local world. They understood the direction of the prevailing wind, the angle of the sun in different seasons, and the unique properties of nearby clay, stone, and wood. Their legacy is a global catalogue of bioclimatic design, where comfort and hygiene were achieved not by overpowering the environment, but by collaborating with it. These homes were living systems shaped by the land itself, offering timeless lessons in sustainable living that were woven directly into the fabric of everyday life. A city's grandest systems were only as reliable as the daily care they received. This introduces a 13th principle of ancient urban wisdom, the establishment of rigorous monitoring and maintenance protocols to ensure these environmental marvels did not fall into ruin. The Roman approach was famously systematic. Officials known as aediles and later the curators aquarum were not just administrators, they were the city's environmental guardians. Their duties included walking the long, elevated stretches of the aqueducts, checking for cracks or subsidence that could interrupt the flow. They descended into the shadowy depths of the sewers with teams of workers, inspecting the stonework for wear and clearing any blockages that threatened to cause backups into the streets above. Meticulous records were kept, detailing everything from the volume of water flowing into different city districts to the schedules for scrubbing the sedimentation tanks. There is even evidence that these officials performed rudimentary water quality assessments, observing the clarity and taste of the supply from various sources to ensure its safety for the public. This was not emergency repair work. It was preventative, scheduled upkeep designed to catch small problems long before they could become city-wide crises. The Byzantine Empire inherited and refined this Roman legacy, creating specialized guilds of maintenance workers dedicated solely to the water system. These teams operated on a clear, established protocol. They knew precisely which sedimentation basins needed to be cleaned each month, which sections of the vast underground cisterns required inspection after the winter rains, and how to patch a leaking terracotta pipe without disrupting the supply to an entire neighborhood. Their work was a continuous, quiet rhythm of care that preserved the functionality of infrastructure for centuries. This philosophy of scheduled maintenance was a global phenomenon, In countless ancient cities, the annual calendar was not just a record of festivals and harvests, it was a maintenance schedule etched into communal life. The cleaning of public drainage channels was a task scheduled for the weeks before the monsoon season arrived, ensuring the city was ready to handle the deluge. The inspection of granaries and water storage jars was a ritual that preceded the long, dry summer months. This collective understanding that infrastructure demanded seasonal attention was a profound acknowledgement that a city was a living system, one that required constant, gentle stewardship to remain healthy. The modern challenge of crumbling bridges and failing pipes highlights a lesson these ancient societies understood intuitively. The initial construction is only the beginning. The true test of a civilization's foresight lies in its commitment to the unglamorous, essential work of upkeep, ensuring that the systems which protect urban life can endure for the generations to come. This journey through the silent streets of ancient cities brings us to a profound realization about human ingenuity. From the gravity-fed Roman aqueducts to the wind-cooled towers of Persia, from the intricate plumbing of Minoan palaces to the floating gardens of the Aztecs, we have witnessed a global tapestry of solutions to the universal challenges of urban life. These early designers were not merely builders, they were keen observers of the natural world. They mastered the fundamental principles of hydrology, guiding water with gravity, and harnessed the physics of airflow and thermal dynamics to create comfort from the elements. Their deep understanding of material science allowed them to select stones that breathed and clays that purified, crafting urban environments that actively promoted health and well-being. The true genius of their approach was its integrated nature. A single system like a Qanat or a Chinampa was never designed for just one purpose. It simultaneously provided a secure water supply, managed waste, regulated temperature, and improved air quality, creating a comprehensive strategy for urban environmental management. These were not isolated technologies, but holistic ecosystems in their own right. As our modern cities grapple with the pressures of rapid urbanization and a changing climate, these historical examples offer more than just fascinating stories. They provide valuable lessons in sustainable design. They teach us the power of community involvement in maintaining shared infrastructure, and they demonstrate the critical importance of long-term, adaptive thinking. The wisdom of our urban ancestors reminds us that creating truly healthy, resilient cities requires a dual commitment to both brilliant technical innovation and a thoughtful, respectful integration with the natural systems that sustain us. These principles are not relics of the past, they are as vital and relevant today as they were thousands of years ago. I invite you to step outside and look at your own urban environment with fresh eyes. Consider how the ancient principles of harnessing breeze, managing water flow, and integrating green spaces could inform the cities of our future. Which of these historical innovations left you most inspired? Share your thoughts in the comments below, and let us continue this conversation about building a healthier world, one rooted in the enduring wisdom of the past.